The room went silent the moment he stood up, but not because anyone cared. They were already looking past him, through him, like he was a chair pushed against the wall by mistake. The woman at the desk didn't lift her eyes when she said, "We'll call you," the way people say goodbye when they never plan to. He sat back down slowly, heat rising in his face, hands locked together to stop them from shaking. Around him, suits whispered to each other. Laughter slid across the polished table like oil. Someone checked their watch, loud enough to make sure he heard it. Everything is clean enough to erase fingerprints. He noticed how every other candidate had been offered water, how their chairs were pulled out for them, how their names were said with effort. His name had been mispronounced twice, then abandoned. He told himself to breathe. In, out. He reminded himself why he was here. Not for pride, not for revenge. He needed this job. Needed it the way a man needs air when his chest is already tight. His rent was 2 weeks late. His mother's medicine bottle was almost empty. The bus ride here had cost him his last cash. And still he came in early. Shoes shined by hand. Resume printed at a library that charged per page. One of the interviewers leaned back and crossed his arms. "You have an interesting background," he said, smiling without warmth. "But we're looking for a different fit, different." That word landed heavy, it always did. The black man nodded, the way he had learned to nod his whole life, the kind of nod that says I understand even when you don't. The kind that keeps you safe. He stood again, quietly, and thanked them for their time. No one thanked him back. As he turned toward the door, he felt the weight of every eye in the room, not on him, but on the next name on the list. Already moving on, already erasing him. Then the door opened. Not softly, not politely. It swung open with purpose. A man stepped in, tall, older, silver hair cut sharp, presence filling the room before he spoke a word. The energy shifted instantly, chairs straightened, smiles appeared. The same people who wouldn't look at the black man 2 seconds ago were now standing. "Good morning, sir," the woman at the desk said, voice suddenly sweet. The director didn't respond right away. His eyes weren't on them. They were fixed on the man standing by the door, halfway out, halfway gone. "You," the director said. One word, calm, firm. The black man froze. His stomach dropped. For a second he thought he had done something wrong, thought maybe security was coming next. He turned slowly. "Yes?" he said. "What's your name?" the director asked. He told him. The director nodded once. "Sit." The room stiffened. The black man hesitated, then returned to his chair. Every face was now watching him. Not with kindness, with confusion, with something close to fear. "I've been listening outside," the director said, finally turning to the panel. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. For the last 20 minutes, no one spoke. "I heard questions," he continued. "I heard answers. I heard laughter, and I heard silence where there shouldn't have been any." The director walked slowly around the table, hands behind his back. He stopped behind the black man's chair. "Do you know why I started this company?" he asked. The panel shook their heads. "Because someone once looked at me the way you looked at him," he said. "Like I didn't belong in the room." The air felt thick now, heavy, hard to breathe. The director turned to the black man. "Tell me," he said, "why do you want this job?" The question was different this time. Not a test. Not a trap. The black man swallowed. His voice was steady but his eyes burned. "And because I know I can do the work." Silence followed. Deep, uncomfortable. The director smiled, just a little. "Good," he said. Was it his resume? The director pressed. "Because I've read it. It's stronger than most of yours." A few heads dropped. Was it his voice? His clothes? He had lived moments like this before, but never like this. Never with power standing beside him instead of against him. The director placed a hand on the back of his chair. "Stand up," he said. He stood. "This man," the director said to the room, "will not be leaving with a will call you." The woman at the desk opened her mouth, then closed it. "He starts Monday," the director continued. "And one more thing." He looked at each interviewer, one by one. "Anyone who had a problem looking him in the eye will be explaining themselves in my office this afternoon." The room felt like it might crack. The black man didn't know what to feel. Relief, shock, fear, joy, all of it crashing at once. As the director walked out, he stopped at the door and turned back. "Son," he said softly, "life is beautiful when you remember your dignity." The door closed. No one spoke. The black man slowly sat back down. His future suddenly open, his past still heavy, and the room around him filled with people who now saw him clearly for the first time. But he knew this wasn't the end. Power never gives up quietly, and the real test was just beginning. He woke up the next morning to the alarm buzzing like it was mocking him. His body ached in ways he hadn't remembered since long days of walking to school, of carrying more weight than anyone should. But today was different. Today was the first day he walked into that office. Not as the invisible man, not as the one who was dismissed, but as the one chosen and chosen, not because the world suddenly cared, but because he refused to let it erase him. The walk to the bus stop felt longer than usual, each step heavy with nerves, hope, and the memory of yesterday's stares. He rehearsed what he would say, how he would move, how he would hold himself, but no rehearsal could prepare him for the weight of being seen, really seen. The city around him moved fast, cars honked, people rushed, yet he felt like he was moving in slow motion, every sound sharpened, every face blurred. He clutched his bag tighter. Inside were not just papers and pens, but years of waiting, every job he didn't get, every word whispered in hallways behind his back, every time he was told, not this time, or maybe later, or simply ignored. All of it pressed against his chest like concrete, but now, just beneath it, a flicker of fire. When he arrived, the lobby shimmered with glass and steel, too bright, too clean. He swallowed. The receptionist smiled politely, and for a moment, he wondered if she recognized him, really recognized him, the way the director did. Then he remembered, most people see what they want to see. Most people don't look at the rest, but today, he would hold his head high anyway. The elevator ride was quiet, just him, his reflection, and the rising tension. He studied his reflection like he was trying to memorize the man he had become, not the one he used to be. His shoulders squared, his jaw set. He whispered to himself, "You belong," not as a plea, but as a declaration. The doors opened, and he stepped into the office. It smelled of coffee and ambition, the air sharp with the scent of people who believed they had power because of where they stood. He spotted the director at the far end, moving between offices, calm and precise, a silent storm that everyone felt but no one dared approach. The man's eyes met his, and a nod was exchanged. He was led to his desk, assigned by the director personally. As he walked, he noticed the glances, some curious, some skeptical, some quietly resentful. It didn't matter, not anymore. He dropped his bag gently, sat and breathed. Around him, the office moved like a living machine. Phones rang, keyboards clacked, feet shuffled, and somewhere in the background, laughter that no longer needed to include him. He didn't flinch. The first task was small, almost trivial, but it mattered. He did it with focus, attention to detail, the kind that only someone who has been ignored for so long can develop. Every email answered, every document checked, every call returned with patience and precision. He noticed the other employees, the ones who had barely looked at him yesterday. Their eyes flicked up. They whispered. They watched. Some tried to test him with unnecessary questions, little traps to see if he would stumble. He didn't, not once. By noon, whispers turned into cautious respect. One by one, his colleagues started asking him for advice. A task they thought was complex, he solved in minutes. A problem that had stalled the team for days, he untangled with quiet confidence. The air around him changed subtly, not because the work made them like him, but because they couldn't deny the force of his competence. Then came the meeting. A high-level board discussion, filled with power suits, titles, and carefully measured words. He was called to present, just for 5 minutes, a small update on the project he had been quietly improving since morning. As he stepped to the front, the room felt like it was closing in, eyes sharp, evaluating, judging. But he remembered the director's words yesterday, dignity. Life is beautiful when you remember your dignity. He spoke, short sentences, clear points, confident tone. No flourish, no apology. Just facts, solutions, insight. The room shifted, chairs leaned forward. Some scribbled notes, some frowned, trying to challenge, but he answered calmly, directly, leaving no room for dismissal. When he finished, silence fell, then a single clap, then another. By the end, even the harshest skeptic in the room had nodded. The director, sitting in the corner, smiled subtly, not because he expected perfection, but because he knew what it took for this man to reach this point. Not talent alone, not luck, not timing, but endurance, patience, and the courage to be seen in a world that often refused to see him. Days turned into weeks, each task completed, each problem solved, each silent victory stacked like bricks, building something larger than the office could measure. He gained respect, not through showiness, not through confrontation, but through relentless competence. He began mentoring new employees, offering guidance, and listening when no one had listened to him. Slowly, the whispers of skepticism faded. Where there had been doubt, there was now acknowledgement. Where there had been dismissal, there was now presence. Yet, despite the victories, he never forgot the first day. Never forget the feeling of being invisible. Never forgot the room, the faces, the laughter, the silence, the word different, landing heavy in his chest. It stayed with him, a reminder that dignity is not granted lightly, that recognition is not given freely, that life, beautiful as it is, sometimes requires persistence in the face of quiet cruelty. One evening, long after most of the office had gone, he stayed behind. The city lights glowed through the glass walls, painting the floor with streaks of gold and silver. He leaned back in his chair, letting the silence embrace him, not as a punishment, but as a companion. He realized something essential. Power and privilege may test you, attempt to erase you, but they cannot take the respect you give yourself. That, he understood, was unshakable. When the director walked by that evening, he didn't need to say a word. A nod passed between them, a shared understanding. Life had tested him. Life had tried to ignore him. Life had tried to make him invisible. But through endurance, through dignity, through quiet defiance, He had turned invisibility into presence. And in that presence, he found not just a job, but a new understanding of what it meant to stand tall when the world would rather you kneel. And just like that, he knew the real work wasn't about being seen. It was about never letting the world erase the man he knew himself to be, no matter how many doors closed, how many eyes averted, or how many whispers tried to define him. That was the lesson life had handed him, wrapped in challenge, struggle, and the unrelenting truth that dignity is not given. It is earned, carried, and defended. Always. By the third week, he was no longer just the new guy. He had a name now, a presence. But presence, he quickly learned, comes with a price. Some people never forgive being shown they were wrong, especially those who have always assumed the world would bend for them. That morning started like any other coffee. Files, the soft hum of fluorescent lights, but tension hung low in the air, almost invisible, almost ignoble, except he could feel it. A colleague, one who had dismissed him from the start, approached his desk with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I hear you handled that report for the West Side account," he said. "Impressive, but..." The pause lingered. Heavy, calculated. "You might want to double-check your numbers next time. Wouldn't want the board to think you're careless." He looked up, calm, steady. "Thanks for the feedback. I'll review it." No anger, no flair, just an acknowledgement. But he could feel the room closing in, a trap being set, the old games playing out with a new player in the spotlight. By mid-afternoon, the trap snapped. During a team meeting, the same colleague brought up an error that didn't exist, twisting minor discrepancies into something catastrophic in an attempt to humiliate him in front of the director and other senior staff. The room went silent. Some are curious, while others eagerly await him to stumble. His stomach tightened. For a split second, he felt the old panic rise, the weight of being invisible, dismissed, erased. But he remembered the nod from the director. The first day, the lesson that dignity is earned, not begged for. He took a slow breath, feeling the air fill his lungs, feeling his hands steady. "I double-checked the report this morning," he said calmly, voice firm, eyes steady. "And here are the notes from my review." He slid the papers across the table. Numbers, annotations, sources, every detail verified, every question anticipated. The colleague faltered. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Others leaned in, silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. He didn't gloat. He simply waited. The director, sitting at the head of the table, raised an eyebrow, subtle but enough. The room shifted. Respect, caution, and slowness began to creep in. But the battle wasn't over. After the meeting, whispers started. "He's too confident. He's getting too much attention. Does he really belong here?" Some words were soft, almost invisible, but they reached him all the same. He felt it, the old sting of exclusion, the invisible walls trying to close in again. Yet this time, he didn't flinch. He had learned that power tests you not when you're weak, but when you are starting to rise. A nod from someone who had avoided him. A quiet, "Good job," whispered by another. Tiny cracks in the walls of prejudice, slowly giving way. The next morning, the real test came. A client, known for being difficult, arrived unannounced. They were loud, dismissive, and critical, expecting submission, expecting hesitation, expecting him to fold. Not a word of apology, not a flicker of fear. "I've reviewed your account," he said evenly, "and I prepared solutions for the challenges you mentioned. Here's a plan that will save..." Others who had witnessed the confrontation looked at him differently, now not just as competent, but as unbreakable. Weeks passed. With each success, each small victory, he gained more ground. But the colleague who had tried to humiliate him earlier did not give up easily. Subtle undermining. Silent competition. Meetings where his ideas were questioned unnecessarily. Emails copied to higher-ups with misleading claims. Yet, through it all, he remained consistent, measured, and dignified. He answered, corrected, and improved, never raising his voice, never retaliating. One afternoon, the director called him into his office. The room smelled of leather and old books, a faint reminder of authority and wisdom. "I've been watching," the director said, leaning back in his chair. "Not just your work, how you handle pressure, how you hold yourself when others try to tear you down." He paused. "Most people would have snapped, most people would have folded, but you didn't. That tells me more about you than any report or presentation ever could." The black man swallowed. Gratitude, relief, and pride battled inside him. "Thank you, sir," he said softly. The director nodded. "Remember this, life will test you, but it will never break the man who refuses to be erased. Others will try, always, and you'll find them in offices, in streets, in classrooms, everywhere. But how you respond calmly, with dignity, with focus, that's what defines you." He left the office that day, feeling heavier and lighter all at once. He carried the knowledge that the real battles were never about being right. They were about being seen, being respected, and refusing to accept invisibility. And though the journey was far from over, he had already passed a test that few understood, let alone survived. By the end of the month, the colleague who had tried to humiliate him finally approached, not with hostility, but with cautious respect. I underestimated you," he said. "I can see now, you belong here." The black man nodded. No celebration, no gloating, just an acknowledgement. Life had handed him challenge after challenge, but he had met each one with the lesson he had learned the first day. Dignity is not given, it is earned, and it is defended, always. As he left the office that evening, the city lights painted streaks across the streets, long shadows stretching behind him. He walked tall. Every step was a reminder that power and prejudice test everyone differently, but strength is measured in how quietly and consistently you hold your ground. And though the future was still uncertain, one thing was clear: he would never again allow the world to make him invisible. Not now, not ever. And in that knowledge, he found a quiet victory more profound than any paycheck, more lasting than any promotion, the triumph of self-respect, endurance, and the unwavering belief that life truly is beautiful when you remember your dignity. If you want, I can continue with the next chapter, where the black man faces his first real moral dilemma or crisis, pushing him to the edge and leading to another powerful, dramatic payoff. The morning started quietly, too quietly. The office buzzed with the usual hum of keyboards and low chatter, but he felt it, the tension, like electricity before a storm. Today was different. The whispers had grown bolder over the past weeks, subtle digs replaced by thinly veiled hostility. The colleague who had tried to humiliate him before had escalated the situation. Files went missing, reports were tampered with, and now, the client he had won over last month was on the phone, furious, convinced there had been mistakes he couldn't explain. He sat at his desk, hands folded, heart steady. His mind raced, not with panic but with calculation. He had been tested before, yes, but this was the kind of pressure that could make or break a man. One wrong word, one hesitation, and the years of struggle, of proving himself, could vanish like smoke. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a second, and whispered to himself, dignity first, always. The phone rang sharply, cutting through the quiet. He answered, calm, controlled. Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. I understand your concerns. Let me walk you through everything step by step. The client barked, frustrated, loud, demanding. The black man listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He let the storm rage while he stayed anchored, each word measured, each explanation clear. By the end of the call, the client's anger had softened, replaced with reluctant respect. I see now. Thank you, the man muttered almost reluctantly. He hung up and leaned back, allowing himself the briefest moment of relief. But there was no celebration. He knew the real battle was still here, in the office, in the eyes of those who doubted him, who resented his presence, who wanted him gone. And then it came, an email that made his chest tighten. His work had been sabotaged. A major error had been planted in the files he had submitted, and it was scheduled for presentation in front of the board in less than an hour. He froze for a second, then stood. Panic tried to rise, but he pushed it down. There was no time for fear. Only he moved quickly, meticulously, retracing every step, checking every number, finding the mistake, correcting it, rebuilding the report from scratch. Minutes ticked by like hours. Sweat ran down his back. His hands shook, but he refused to let them show. He refused to let the world see him crumble. The board meeting began. Suits filed in, chairs scraping, murmurs buzzing. He walked in carrying the corrected report, each step deliberate. Eyes followed him, some doubtful, some curious, some openly hostile. He felt the familiar sting of being the outsider, the one who had to prove himself again and again. But this time, he didn't flinch. He didn't shrink. He stood tall, the weight of every slight, every dismissal, every different fit behind him, and faced the room like a man who had earned his place. The presentation started. Questions came fast, sharp, designed to trip him up, but he was ready. Every number is double-checked, every argument anticipated, every scenario is considered. He answered calmly, concisely, without arrogance, without hesitation. The room shifted, heads tilted, frowns softened. Even the colleagues who had plotted against him could not hide their surprise. Halfway through, his main antagonist, the colleague who had tried to undermine him since day one, stood. How can we trust this report? He demanded. There were discrepancies last week. Mistakes were found. The black man didn't flinch. That report, he said, voice steady, was corrected as soon as the errors were discovered. Every number is verified, every source confirmed, and I've already briefed the client on the corrections. The results are accurate, reliable, and ready for implementation. The mistakes weren't mine, but I took responsibility. I fixed them. Because that's what work demands. That's what accountability looks like. Silence fell. The director, seated at the far end, leaned back, expression unreadable but proud. The board members exchanged glances. Even the antagonist had no words. Then, the director stood, slowly, commanding the room without raising his voice. Let me make this clear, he said. This man did not just survive an attempt to erase him. He excelled. He handled pressure, sabotage, and doubt with a level of dignity and competence most of you will never see. That is why he belongs here. The room felt like it might crack. Some faces flushed. Some eyes darted away. Others finally looked directly at him, seeing him fully, no longer the different fit, no longer invisible. The black man exhaled, shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. Relief mingled with pride, but also understanding. Life had tested him again, pushed him to the edge, and forced him to choose between reacting with anger or responding with dignity. He had chosen wisely. Every insult, every trap, every whisper had been a test, and he had passed. Later, the office was quieter. The antagonist approached, not with malice, but with a tentative acknowledgement. You handled that well, he said. I underestimated you. The black man nodded once. It's not about being underestimated, he said. It's about never letting the world make you invisible. By evening, as he left the office, the city light stretched across the streets, long shadows behind him. He walked tall, every step a testament to endurance, patience, and the quiet strength of dignity. He understood, finally, that success wasn't just about a paycheck or a promotion. It was about standing firm when the world tries to erase you. About holding your ground, unshakable, even when no one is watching. He passed the lobby, glanced at the director's office, and caught a brief nod. No words needed. Life, he realized, had given him the ultimate lesson. Power may test test you. Prejudice may try to diminish you, but the respect you give yourself through every choice, every reaction, every moment of endurance cannot be taken away. He stepped out into the night, cool air on his face, and smiled softly. Life was beautiful, not because it was easy, but because he had proven to himself and the world that dignity could survive even the harshest trials. That night, for the first time, he truly believed it, and as the city hummed around him, he knew something eternal. The world might ignore you, dismiss you, or even try to break you, but when you carry your dignity, when you refuse to be invisible, when you respond with integrity instead of anger, life, in its truest form, becomes unmistakably beautiful.